And hi everyone, welcome to Life Edge, because life just doesn't have to be mediocre. And I'm joined today by the one and only Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
I'm so glad to be here, and we're going to talk about technology and innovation.
And there's a lot of it going on right now, and boy, it's going to be an interesting future.
Oh, yeah.
Good, scary, and bad. You never know.
Woohoo!
Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation at www.relate.com, your training and video partner. So you like the new intro?
I like it. It's nice.
It's different. It's similar, but we added more energy to it. I think we hated that kind of cowboy dirge.
Sure, yeah, exactly. I mean, I like the more of the surfer type music and not so much ICP.
Right.
Insane Clown Posse.
Yep. So today's about tech.
Yes. I'm glad I'm here. I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk about technology because, as you know, the last 3-4 years I've been involved in promoting and kind of being a technology scout and also promoting technology and working with figuring out ways for people to get funding and also to commercialize and beta test. It's been a lot of fun, and I've seen some progress, seen some really interesting ideas.
So what area are you seeing the most investment or interest in?
Well, I'd say by far is in the area of machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning. And what I'm seeing there is a lot of promise and a lot of people doing the same thing. So it's really hard to say how much is truly innovation or how much is just population of people doing it.
Yeah,
a lot of people are using the basic frameworks. I mean, when computing power changed, accelerated, cloud computing came on board, and then people could really get into Azure, Watson, Google Analytics, and Google platforms, and also Amazon Web Services. We started seeing a lot of people building on those platforms and those environments.
Yeah, it's interesting. Azure has been really coming on strong, and I think they're probably one of the biggest threats to Google. Not Google, to Amazon, because they're really selling the services just like Amazon does. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes.
Well, exactly. And so like Amazon Web Services, a lot of people don't realize, they think of Amazon as just like the internet store. and maybe they sell some things to the marketplace, but they don't, and they also maybe see some Amazon trucks around. They don't realize behind the scenes that Amazon is like hosting, and also they have different environments that have built in different apps, so you can use those apps and accelerate your progress.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And with all that hosting comes a lot of control too. They know they have a lot of access to information, and you'd only hope that they are honest with it, but you never know in today's day and age. Everybody's got access to a lot of information. That's a little worrisome sometimes. Yeah, have you ever done a search on yourself? You'll probably be surprised to find everything about you on the web within seconds. It's like, geez.
Well, I started doing searches on my own name early when there were search engines, just out of curiosity and a sense of horror to see how much of my creative writing would show up. And I realized that quite a bit would. So that's why I started writing lots and lots of articles about e-learning and starting a blog and writing about technology, so that I maybe kind of like overwhelm the other stuff.
Yeah, you're very prolific. A lot of people don't realize how prolific you are. You write a lot.
Yeah, thank you. I do, and not everything shows up on the web, but I like writing, and I've written quite a few books as well on like coding and how to like use Moodle. I've written, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, on Canvas. So I don't know how many, maybe 6 books at this point
Yeah, good.
on
That's
and
great.
then instructional videos.
No, that's great. Well, interesting talking, like you said, about artificial intelligence, machine learning. Yesterday, Google announced that their 72 qubit computer is out. 72 qubits, that's quantum bits. That now is the largest quantum computer. I think it was done in conjunction with UCSB, University of California at Santa Barbara, which is only like 45 minutes from us. And it's real interesting because with that 72 qubit technology, they were able to do, and I think it was for NASA, I'm not 100% sure, they were able to do something that would take current day supercomputers, the fastest ones you can find, 10,000 years to calculate, and they
Man,
calculated it in 3 hours and 20 minutes.
that's amazing.
Mind
So,
boggling.
so when you say like quantum computing, a lot of people won't know what that means. Could you describe it?
Um, Probably badly, but a quantum computer is based on quantum. Your sensors are made, not sensors, your chips are made out of quantum particles per se. So you have zero
Mhm.
ones and combinations of the two. So the quantum particle can be a zero, a one, or both at the same time, which is sort of interesting. It's also arranged in more of a like a pine tree, like a cone from a pine tree. So you've got layers on the chips, which again supposedly let you access things much, much more quickly. States change almost randomly on some of these computers, and it's all about positioning where a bit is in a computer. But it's so fast that it can figure all of that out very, very, very quickly. And then it has really, it's not a computer that would play games. It's a computational computer really more than anything else, because
Well, that makes sense
it's
because,
hard to
yeah, I mean,
control where the quantum are, or the quanta are. And so as a result, it can be used for certain things really, really well, like that kind of computational logic. I think Harold was telling me something earlier. What were you saying, Harold, earlier about an experiment?
Oh, um,
Are you
y-
mic'd?
yes.
Can you hear Harold?
Which experiment? Could you refresh me? We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah, you brought something up. You were looking at something on the web, and I can't remember what it was right now. Left
Uh,
my quantum brain. Uh, what was it? It was something to do with, oh gosh, what was it? Well, basically, it was about the speed of which it can calculate different things, and how they're also planning on using it for AI. They think that it can really learn, natural language
mhm.
processing and AI combination, and that if they get it right, that the quantum computer could be so quick, so fast to understand multiple languages, multiple everything, and be able to communicate in many different ways quickly.
Well, I think that that's really interesting. And you think about it, it's all about proximity
Hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
making things faster because they're close to each other.
Yep.
So you think about a pine cone or a long extended linear highway. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same. It's like getting the pine cone, all the needles, and stretching them all out. But if you have it together, you
Yeah.
go, and
Yeah.
it's fast.
It's pretty amazing. And right now, there's three major companies doing it. You've got IBM, you've got Intel, and Google. Those are the three major ones doing a lot of research on quantum computing, and they're coming up with varying results of what it can be used for, what it really doesn't work for. Um, and they're not huge machines, it looks like, at this point. They're not very large. I remember once I visited a factory that wasn't very far from where we live here. It was in Moore Park, and they were developing the carbon nanotubes, micro, nanotechnology, carbon nanotubes, really teeny. And I
Hmm.
asked probably the stupidest question I could have. I asked the chief scientist there, I go, where do you warehouse what you develop? And she pulls out a matchbox And she goes, right here. I just started laughing. I go, it's a dumb question. And here she goes, there are billions of nanotubes right in this box. It's pretty interesting.
I used to walk by the nanotechnology lab at SUNY Albany in Albany, New York, when I'd love to run and jog and walk around there. And I thought, how did they keep them inside? How did they keep them? How many are attacking me as I walk? But anyway, that was a paranoid thought.
Yep.
So, for a concrete way of a lot of the companies that are in geophysics and that deal with deep earth information and also geophysical surveys, and they use a lot of these platforms that we're talking about, and one of a recent showcase, a technology showcase we call UPitch technology showcase. We had about 50 presenters, and that was spread over 2 days. And if we click on one, there's one that if we click on, it starts with N. This is Nash, the Smart Assistant for Oil and Gas. People are using exactly what you're talking about, Rick, to use artificial intelligence to comb through a lot of data.
My screen's black, Harold.
Yeah,
it's loading.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit slow to load. It's housed. We can share that link in the show notes later. Okay. But it's part of the AAPG and Society of Petroleum Engineers, and also. Oh, that's weird. Well, okay. So if somebody wants to go through, hopefully they'll be able to click. Maybe we could try one of the other presentations.
Is this it right now?
It might have been too big to go. I don't know.
Susan's video feed is frozen.
But anyway, I have linked presentations. And so this one is not going through the firewall, but it might be because it's too big. But just in a nutshell, what Nash is they're a startup in Houston, and their goal is to be the Alexa of oil and gas. So what they're doing is combing through all kinds of unstructured data. A couple of weeks ago, we had Delphincia, Alec Walker of Delphincia on, and they're doing pretty much the same thing, but in the same general area, where they are using these platforms. I don't know if they're using Amazon Web Services or Microsoft's Watson or Azure, but essentially they're going through repositories that a company might have, and that they will. And then, I think, Harold, all we're seeing is just a blank screen. We might go back to the two-shot.
I believe actually your video feed is frozen because right now we actually have the PDF up.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Well, good. I'm glad okay, so what is it looking like since I can't see it? What is it saying?
So here it's got this 4-panel thing where it says the problem, and it's showing someone asking different questions to a landman, a completion engineer, a drilling engineer, and a facilities engineer. And,
okay, so yeah, and a lot of people have said, oh, well, they're using these platforms. I see a lot of people using sort of chat bots, and at this point it looks like a chat bot, but it's actually more than a chat bot. And if you scroll through the PDF, you'll see that they're pushing their algorithms to do more and to comb through repositories and organize the data, and then where they're using artificial intelligence is instead of doing like human tagging or whatever, they're using pattern recognition and also optical character recognition as well. But where the big challenge is, and I don't know, somebody's going to come up with this sometime, is where you have a lot of old maps and information, scanned documents that were scanned, and they're PDFs, but they're basically images. They're kind of like a scanned photograph. They're not. They can't be. It's difficult to use optical OCR. So that's one place where I see it, like whenever somebody breaks through that and is able to really use unstructured data that are messy and
Yep.
resistant for pattern recognition. That I see that's going to be a big breakthrough, and then that will take a lot of computing power because I think that they'll have to like pixelate everything and then do pattern recognition with that. What do you think, Rick?
You're probably right. And it's going to be interesting once they get it. I've seen some of the old documents and stuff. They're really hard to scan. They're so broken up, or they're just tricky. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get to it, or if it'll just be an approximation. Yeah, that's a tough one, because I've gotten documents from people, and they go, "What do you think?" I can't read it. It's like, I think it's interesting, but it's so hard to read. You can zoom in, and it just becomes like a haze.
Exactly.
And so that's actually kind of tricky.
Yeah. So then if it tries to convert it into a document that you like,
it probably does some sort of contrast detection, maybe even a spectral analysis to try to figure out what's actually underneath it, or if it can find a pattern within that. That'll be interesting.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then somehow, I mean, I think you could probably do certain repositories that were all scanned around the same time, and it would learn it. You could have some training sets. So like R looks like this, and blah blah blah.
Yep.
But I mean, again, that's going to take a lot of computing power.
Yep.
So
now I think we lost your video feed. Your audio is perfect, but your video is gone.
Well, what should I do?
Do you want to try logging back in real quick? Log off and log back in?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. I think that document may have knocked her out. It was too big.
Yeah.
Took up the bandwidth, right?
Did that work?
Let's see.
Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
There you go. You know what I think happened? That document was really large, and it knocked out the bandwidth.
Right. I think, so much for my great idea.
Yeah, a lot of people don't compress their PowerPoints. They're huge. But you know what? We'll put a link to it in the show notes, like you said.
Right. And I can just describe some of the things. Like, okay, so another big area that we're seeing a lot of things, besides AI, we're seeing a lot of simulations and a lot of reservoir characterizations, and then predicting fluid flow or putting different environments. So it's like they can actually see, this is what will happen if I do this or that to the wells, and that's a lot of fun.
A lot of people don't realize the amount of computing power necessary in geology, and especially in petroleum and some of the research. It's a lot. It's amazing how much is needed to be able to figure out like you said, the fluid flow, composition, depth, temperature, everything, and all those variables change quickly.
Oh yeah, and then another thing too, I'm seeing big breakthrough. Lots and lots of people with new sensors, and the sensors can be like in drones, and they're like hyperspectral sensors, and they're used for leak detection or monitoring wildfires, all sorts of things. I mean, you probably saw a lot of that in California.
I have a friend who's starting a company. They've already started it, and they're doing projects. They are measuring from a rooftop, for example. They go to like large campuses, and they can measure the amount of wear and tear on a roof due to water damage or other things, and prevent that damage before it really happens, just through drones and spectral analysis and whatever else they're doing. It's pretty cool. It's just amazing that the kind of things that people are doing with drones. And we've had several guests who did drone work, and it was pretty fascinating. And because most people go drone, fly over your neighbor's house and look at a naked person. No, that's not what they're there for.
Oh my gosh.
And that's why all the laws got passed about privacy and everything else with drones, because so many idiots were doing the wrong thing. And
then getting into commercial flights.
And so now, they can't just fly everywhere. If you try to rent a drone, this is interesting. Most drone rental companies will not rent to you unless you rent the operator with the drone.
Well, that has to do with the licensing and the permits that are required.
Well, they also they don't
FA.
want the things crashing. The people don't know how to fly them.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's another good point. But a lot of them are so smart now that they're kind of like almost crash proof.
That's true.
At least the little ones.
Yeah,
But
and it's
like,
amazing how many drones, from enormous sizes to just very small ones.
yeah, yeah, and then the other thing too, like, okay, so they're using it for precision agriculture, precision for, and the way that they do that, and especially for coming up with leaks, like saltwater leaks or whatever, they're not really detecting the saltwater, and they're not really detecting the methane. They're they're detecting the different color, and so they're using infrared, and
Yeah.
so the color is a proxy, the vegetation health is a proxy, and also the water content.
It's really cool if you think about what we're doing now with that kind of. Most people don't know we're doing this stuff, and
Right.
it's pretty amazing how much it's becoming standard routine operating procedure.
Oh, definitely, and they're using them just for all kinds of things, for logistics and supply chain. And another, speaking of leaks, we have some technologies in that are linked there. One is Nautilus Technologies.
Mm-hmm.
They have a different kind of way to detect leaks and monitor pipeline integrity with gas pipelines. But they're doing it acoustically with equipment that sits on top of the pipe. But they can detect, because of computing power, within 5 miles away, within 3 inches.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty accurate.
It's crazy.
Well, what do we have? Satellites in the sky that can literally, with their lenses, zoom in on the fine print of a contract from space. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
That's pretty-
anyway, so, yeah, the other thing that doesn't work, and it's just interestingly, is that if you don't have a good Wi-Fi connection, so much for your technology.
That's right. Now, you were going to talk a little bit. We got about 10 more minutes. You were going to talk about the entrepreneur conference you went to, kind of a tech entrepreneur conference.
Oh, yeah. So, okay, so I went to several. So the one that I went to, okay, the ones that we're doing, UPitch, what we're doing is we're trying to find, and we have several of these each year.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to matchmake and get people in front of companies, for example, Chevron and Hess and Shell. They all have divisions that are technology ventures. So they'll invest, and also they'll try out new technologies. And then we also get in front of angel investors, and they will invest in startups. So you have startups, and also you have sort of the commercialization partners once they're up to like stage 5 in the NASA technology development stage. But then I also went to a conference that's called Energy Disruptors, and it was very interesting talking about the future and what we're seeing in terms of economic and political trends right now, and the implications for technology. So we talked a lot about blockchain and the way that people are trying to be able to overcome certain kind of limitations of banking, and also product integrity.
Yeah. Now,
And then we also...
Now, what is blockchain?
Okay, blockchain. Okay, you've heard of cryptocurrencies and
Yes.
okay, so cryptocurrencies are used. They're built by a blockchain.
Yes.
A blockchain is
blocking. I'm sorry. I heard something else, so I got it. Yep.
Yeah. So essentially, it's a specific kind of code and address that's it's unique, and so like if you have a certain supply of part or even a medicine or whatever, it's being used to avoid counterfeits, and it's also being used to authenticate contracts, and it's also being used in transfers of funding where you have situations where it's very difficult.
Yeah. Hasn't the blockchain basically replaced letters of credit in today's day and age?
Some people would argue that yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not
I would
seeing
think
that
so.
completely,
I remember when I worked in export-import international banking, we did everything was done with letters of credit, but they weren't as secure as what the blockchains are. The blockchains are very, very secure. And banks are using blockchain. Actually, banks have been using blockchain for over 20 years. But now it's become very popular with the cryptocurrencies. And it's pretty interesting. By the way, I don't know if you've ever seen this podcast. It's really quite good. It's called London Real TV with Brian Rose.
Yeah.
You have seen it.
I had not seen that. I had not until
Oh,
you
haven't?
recommended
They're wonderful. And he interviews some of the most interesting people. Like he says, we try to interview the most interesting people on earth. He really does. People from all walks of life, different things that they're well known for, and absolutely great interviews and very interesting topics. London Real TV. So if you're watching out there and you haven't seen it, Brian Rose is the host and creator of it, and he has had some very interesting people on, people from all walks of life. You might know some of them. Greg Braden. Do you know Greg?
I've heard the name, but I don't.
Now he's a trained geologist. He's a degree geologist, but he's also a religious scholar studying things like the Essenes and their healing methods. Fascinating.
Crazy.
It's really fascinating.
Crystals. Crystal energy.
Yeah. He said they did some things that, especially with heart frequencies, not knowing what the frequencies were per se, but now they're validating that those frequencies are correct for a heart. Yeah, it's just really fascinating stuff. And but no, I recommend anybody who, if you like our show, you'll probably like this one because it's all about interviewing people who are different, interesting. And again, London Real TV. It's on YouTube, or I think you can go to the website, londonreal.tv.
That's really interesting. And I don't know what you think about, like, how we're going to be, say, doing business or living our lives, and what kind of jobs we'll have in like 5 years. I have a few theories, but what do you think?
I think we're in the wild, wild west right now. We're at the beginning of change that is going to really be more change than a lot of people are probably used to or can handle. Things have changed so fast over the last 40 years, 50 years, or maybe let's say 70 years, from the late 40s on. The changes have been incredible. And we as a civilization haven't really adapted all that well, psychologically, physically, emotionally, to a lot of the changes. They happen quickly. Not everybody can handle quick. And so that's part of the problem. The changes are coming so quickly, and we're assuming things that are good that may not be good in the long run or may not be healthy, like our addictions to cell phones, to computers, to this, that. Yeah, they're fun, they're good, but they could also be an addiction. And those are all things that are great, but they're double-edged swords. On the one hand, they're good, and on the other hand, they cut you. It's going to be interesting, and I do think we're going to have a major problem with population growth and jobs. There aren't enough jobs right now to employ everybody.
Well, you mentioned, like the conference I went to, where I listened to people talking about the future, and they were basically generally vice presidents of like major corporations, and they were talking about energy and resources, and each one talked about population growth, talked about the growth of the middle class in India and in China, so that even though the population, each person doesn't have as many children, they consume more. In middle class, you consume more. And then also, you have the huge issue that they're having in China now with who takes care of the elderly.
Well, they don't.
No, I mean, they. How can you? If you are one person, or you're a family, and you've got two people and 4 parents.
Well, what I like is the fact that everyone looks at China as an incredible country that's done incredible things, but they are actually quite susceptible to collapse. They don't have a solid grasp on reality when it comes to controlling people. They do it through a very harsh hand. That doesn't work with certain types of people, especially the more technological we get, the less that's going to work. The more intelligent people, the less that's going to work. And they're already having problems with Hong Kong. Taiwan's another thorn in their side. And they're trying to figure out what the heck are we going to do. So they have all this major technology. They're not really creators of it. They're basically doers of it. In other words, we give them, here, we want to build this, and they build it. But most of the technology doesn't come internally. It comes from things given to them. And they are developing to a certain point now. But
well, I think I take issue with that to a degree because I work with a lot of Chinese.
They are developing now. Yeah, but they didn't start that way. Yeah.
But okay, and then but it's pockets. I mean, there's a lot of income inequality and inequality across the country, and they're doing an amazing job, but it's hard to catch up. And then I would say that culturally, Confucianism is a different basic mindset than individualism. Religions that focus on that.
Yeah, that's true. And they were never really Taoists. That was just a small group. So very different. But you're right. There's so many changes coming, and I don't know. What do you foresee as the next 5 years? It might be 5. It might be 10. I don't think it's going to be much longer than that before we see massive changes.
I see. Okay, so first of all, I think that all this latest stuff about we'll see more people being used as pawns to try to enforce a certain mindset or control over, say, the resources or behaviors.
Yeah.
I think it boils down to food and water and festivals. Because, okay, no jobs, you have to have something to keep people busy. So you have more gatherings, more festivals, more activities.
Right.
So once you have the idea, somebody has to organize it. So you create jobs. But you can only do that if you have food and water and transportation. And there's a lot of work right now being done to try to alleviate energy poverty and try to get electricity to people, thinking that there's just no hope if there's no energy.
And yet it's sort of interesting because if you look at Africa, which everybody says they're backwards, they're primitive, they're not. They're growing. There's some of the countries in Africa are very well off, and they're developing strongly. The Chinese are investing a fortune in Africa right now.
Right. Yeah,
more than we are. We don't invest that much anymore. And they've got cities that are growing. They're beautiful cities. They're really emerging, but it's quiet. They don't get the marketing other people get, which is sort of a shame because they're making very heavy inroads, but yet all you hear about is the bad, not the good. So it's just sort of...
Well, yeah, and I also wonder, for example, with Brexit, and now I guess Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are visiting South Africa, and it's right in the middle of all this expropriation of farms and things that were taken from tribal members, and I just wonder what impact that's going to have on, say, English or British citizens. Yeah. Because I wonder how many of them own that, and that's going to be massive. And they vacation rentals or safari tours or whatever.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. What do you think the future of jobs will be?
I think that innovation will always be rewarded. I think creativity will always be rewarded. I also think that family concepts, tribal family belonging, will be more important than ever. So we'll fragment into more and more, I would say, groups that in some cases are going to look like cults. Some cases will look like gangs. Some cases will look like healthy people focus on, bettering themselves. But people will have basic needs for affiliation, and the technology and innovation. It's you can be creative, but if nobody sees it and doesn't do anything, you're like, what was it for? And so, I think we'll see that more than ever. So if you have an idea, get it out there and form your own tribe.
Yep. Yeah, it is going to be interesting. And it's scary and it's also exciting at the same time. So it will be very interesting to see which way things grow and which way they fall. It's just going to be an interesting mindset.
Exactly. I think the key is to never give up and create a support team. And I jokingly call it a tribe, but just call it create a network of people, true believers, and believe and help each other.
Excuse me. Anyway, we are out of time, but Susan, we need to, next time we don't have a guest, or even we'll just do another show when you have time. We got a lot more to talk about this. We only covered 2 of the companies and categories. I think we should definitely let us know when you have, like I said, when we don't have a guest, or when you want to do a second show. Let's do it, because we're only just touching.
I'll put together my own. Yeah, I'll put together my own PowerPoint that won't be as heavy as those massive ones that have videos embedded and stuff. And we'll just flip through and watch these somewhere. There's a lot of fun.
That'll be great. Well, thank you again for joining us today and sharing. And for all you people watching, if you have any questions, send us notes and let us know what you want to hear, what you want to talk about. It'd be fun to start a discussion. And we hope you guys have a great weekend and enjoy it. We'll see you next week on Life Edge. Take care, Susan. Thanks.
I really enjoyed it.
Bye-bye. And that's a wrap.